Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast. We believe the best financial advice should always be conflict-free. I'm your host, Casey Smith. Today, I'm joined with Amy Rambo, travel agent with the Blue Pineapple Travel Group.
Hi, Casey. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Amy, we've done a couple of segments about travel with you here in the past. And so I thought it'd be great to bring you back on as people start looking into 2024 and where they want to go. But more importantly, I was actually talking with Missy a couple of weeks ago. She's asking me, well, when I work with people, what kind of travel, how do I set a travel budget? I was like, well, usually I just listen to what they want to do and they tell me the number. But what we're realizing is not everybody really knows how to set that number because they aren't necessarily actively traveling right now.
Absolutely. We find that too, especially when people contact us. That is one of the questions we do try to ask, not really to lock people into a number, just to give us an idea, because travel budgets can vary widely. Even within a destination. Say you want to go to Costa Rica, you could spend $3,000, $5,000, or you could spend $25,000. I mean, it just depends on where you want to stay, what you want to do, how long you want to be there,
what your activities are.
Exactly, all your activities. So, for the most part, it does help if people have an idea, either from their own disposable income, because travel it's a luxury. It's not a necessity. So of course, I'm sure coming from your side of things, you're trying to help people plan out, their best budget overall for their expenses. And travel does fall into that. It's not a bill I have to pay. It's something extra that I get to do. Right. However, it is a overall large benefit in life. There's great family bonding that you can do on a trip. There's a lot of cultural engagement. There's a lot of growth personally that you can do as you travel. So while it's not like a bill or necessity in your life, it is a high value item that should be and can be added into an overall budget. So I think one side of it can be from your financial overall picture, like successful plan. How much of a percentage of somebody's income should they give over to travel? I think it should definitely be a category for sure. I'm glad that you're encouraging people. I think it's a worthwhile
Some people
category.
It's a category. Some people not as much. They work it into their overall budget. It also depends on the situation. We have a lot of clients who their income need and what their maximum spending ability and what they want to do. There's a very wide gap. So they're going to continue to build wealth for the rest of their life. And then you have some people that want to travel, but we're like, how are we going to make this work? One technique that we found is, you've probably heard, you have in retirement, you have the go years, the slow go years, and the no go years, right? So a lot of times for somebody who's retiring at 65, we could work in a travel budget for, say, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 a year. But then we cut it off by the time they're like 75.
Right.
Because typically you're kind of slowing down by that point, certainly by the time they're 80 for sure.
Right.
And then they don't carry that expense anymore going forward. So it allows more money to be spent sooner. And then you can kind of step ladder it down over time. But one of the things that I was thinking about before we came on was, how much does travel cost? I just came back from a trip from Telluride. First time I've ever been there. I always see these beautiful pictures, and I kept taking pictures when I was there of the mountain and the city. And I was like, this doesn't look anything like what I'm looking at right now. So
you can't capture. Like 9 times out of 10, it's so hard to capture.
Every morning I'd walk to the ski slope with the kids, and the light on the mountain would be different every single time. It's like, this is so pretty. It was an expensive trip. Montrose is where you fly into, and then you drive an hour and a half, I guess it's south down to Telluride. And I will say that the Delta has a flight nonstop once a day. And it took 550,000 sky miles to move 5 people. Ooh. And we sat, I think, the second to last row on the airplane. I have ambitions to be in the second row, not the second to last row. But
depending on when you book your ticket, that also has
a lot of times I am the second row, but it's 1 or 2 of us, not 5 of us.
Not all of you.
So yeah, but it was, to me, it was worth it. And it just kind of fit what we were trying to accomplish. And we rented a place on Airbnb. But it was,
but even with that, because I'm sure you're probably thinking, well, I mean, it's domestic, it's within the United States.
Right.
Surely, we will have been saving. It's not like we're jetting off to the Alps or something.
I think the Alps have been cheaper.
They might have been actually, except for maybe the plane ticket. I don't know. But, and I think that's, kind of going back to what we were talking about planning. There are some things that kind of, aren't what they always seem. It would seem like in our minds going to the Alps or something would be like way more expensive than the Rockies. But there are certain destinations, places within those regions that it actually is the reverse.
Well, it also depends on how many people are traveling. If it's just you and your spouse, or you're doing your own thing, but going with friends and they're doing their own thing, it's so much logistically easier. In Europe, especially, is not built this way. In the US, I question it. But for a family of 5 or even a family of 4,
to try and stay all in one place,
yeah, and it's not a hotel room,
right?
Not a hotel room. So we haven't stayed in hotel rooms as a family in years. Now, maybe occasionally in a small town, then you just book like 3 rooms, but they're like, $80 a piece.
Right.
It's no big deal. Right.
Right.
But in a city like Telluride, that would be very cost prohibitive. I don't think there's a hotel room there that was less than $1,400 a night, especially butted up next to the gondola.
Right, for sure. And especially the
town.
Time of year, obviously it's
True.
Season. They know that's their time, right? They got to make their money. And
when I was there, I was just shocked how much we were spending in food. I just started booking restaurants. I at the point in my life where I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the costs. I just know that my household requirement is we have good food.
Right.
And so, you just start going through Open Table and gathering the reservations that you can find. And when we got there, I was rather shocked at how expensive it was. So it got me thinking.
Yes.
Inflation, just travel inflation. So looking back at what it cost me to go last week, and then thinking, well, what would that have cost in like 2019? So there's actually a U.S. Travel Association that has a travel price index. And thanks to Google, I was able to find their index without having to pay the $1,000 a year association fee.
That's amazing. This is news to me.
Someone had reposted it. But so I think back to 2019. So, all right, there was a period in 2020. COVID didn't really scare me that much. We weren't in the demographic that was really being hurt. So we kept moving around. And we would go to we went to Park City for the first time. I think I put the whole family in first class. Actually, I think it was like $380, $420 a person.
Yeah.
Round trip. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. There were a couple of,
it was a huge airplane. It was like the airplane was not supposed to be going to Salt Lake City.
And you could get like an entire row to yourself. People for the most part had
airport was empty
traveling, and the airlines and destinations, to take years off like that were just devastating.
Oh, absolutely.
So they wanted people to come. So they were, things were still happening, but I think it did kind of give this false impression of what to expect in cost.
So you compare that to where things are now,
and it feels astronomical.
It's astronomical, but actually since 2019, average airfare has actually dropped 5.3%.
Which is amazing because it doesn't feel like
it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah.
But in 2019, if you remember, airline stocks were near all-time highs. I mean, everything was going crazy as far as travel. Everybody was going everywhere. Well, and then it just came to a screeching halt.
Right. And then I think there was that, the revenge travel. Don't let let it keep you down.
Right.
I've finally broken out. Let me go.
That was a year and a half ago.
2021, 22, even into 23, there was such a surge in travel that I think that also helped raise the cost. And then, as it says here, fuel for the airplane, overall inflation, all of that's kind of gone into it. It is nice to hear that the prices for 2024 are projected to seem slightly lower than that. Although I would say probably depending on destination, time of year you're traveling, summer, during the holidays. Those are times when you're probably not going to find the greatest deals on airfare, kind of no matter what year it is and what's happening in inflation, just because those are top peak travel times. And, like we've said, airlines know that and they want to be able to make their money.
Now, the overall cost of travel, though, has gone up 19.6% since 2019. But a lot of that comes from gas. So it's up 36% since 2019. Not that intercity or public transportation would be most of our listeners' mode of transportation, but that is up 6 and 4 respectively.
Depending, if you're in a European city or something, you're going to be taking the subway or trains.
Train going by right now. Perfect timing. Lodging, I've definitely have seen this. Lodging's up 13%. And then the big one was food and beverage. So what it's costing you to eat on the road is now up 25% compared to 2019.
I mean, that's inflation right there.
Yeah.
And I think that when you're looking at a travel budget, I think people's minds obviously go to the flight, the hotel, the activities. And then you're kind of like, and then we'll pay for the food.
Right. That's true. Recreation up 13%. Right. Yeah. That's part of the thing.
You might pre-book some tours or activities and think, well, we want to go to this museum and we want to do this cooking class. And so you're going to build that in. But really food and beverage can be the thing that then when you walk away from the trip, you're kind of going, wait, I had planned A and then I spent B, and you're kind of thinking, what was
it's like barely being able to afford to get into Disney. And then you get there and you realize the hamburger is $25.
And there's all kinds of lists on the best things you can't miss. So you got to stand in that line and get that ice cream thing. But yeah, so it's planning out what you should expect to pay in a destination. Like I said, can vary widely, but it is good to go ahead and have kind of that, what's the ouch number that I have in mind if I'm going to come to a trip and I'm going to come to either my travel agent or my website or my family, and we're going to sit down and talk about it. Having kind of that, what's the ideal number overall, and then what's my
so is that where you start number? Is that where you start with a number? This is how much I want to spend on the trip, or is it more of you start with what you want to do on the trip and then you come into a number and then you go yes or no? Which way do you build it?
I mean, I think you could go either way. I think it helps sometimes, especially if you're walking into a travel advisor, to have kind of that. It doesn't have to be super specific. Like I said, you might have just that out. We hit ouch at 25,000, where we, and so ideally we'd want to actually spend closer to 15 or 18,000.
Right.
That does help because I think there is such a wide range of options within a lot of these categories. So depending on how much you want to spend, there's, we could percentage out. All right, well, how much of that should go to the hotel? So, and then even within that, so maybe you want to go to Italy. So you want to take your family to Italy and you're wanting to do Florence, Rome, and the Amalfi Coast. And everybody's pretty sure that they want to be out and about in Rome. Nobody wants to be sitting in a hotel. So you're going to maybe budget scale back in that hotel. Right. But then you really want a view outside the Amalfi Coast. You want to be able to look out on that blue water. You want to be able to relax a little bit, maybe not go quite so fast. So maybe you spend more on your hotel there. So I think going into it with that kind of overall number can be really beneficial, because then you can piece together the components to kind of fit that versus thinking, what will it cost? Because like I said, you go to the internet, you go to a travel agent, and I'll say, I mean, you could spend $50 a night on a back corner hostel somewhere, or you can spend $5,000 a night, because I think it can be,
there's something in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. Because it can be so wide and varied. It does help to walk into it.
I mean, having a travel advisor definitely helps. I mean, our trip to Telluride, I determined after I had already rented the car and I was in town, that I didn't need a car. I should have just paid for a private car pickup to carry us from the carries from the airport down into town. It's an hour and a half drive. So it's something you'd want to coordinate.
Right. So you do need the transportation.
You do. And there's probably a shuttle, but my wife gets like severe motion sickness. And if I pay for a private car, I can be like, hey, dude, like, yeah, she's sitting up front and she doesn't throw up all over you if you don't drive right. And I say it just like that. And so far they've been careful drivers when you put it that way. But the point is that could have saved $1,000 in car rental.
Sure. Because somebody could have said, look, if you want to do $500 for that private transfer,
it'd been worth it.
$500, then you're not spending that.
Exactly. Yeah, because once I got there, it's like this is a really tiny town, and cars just stayed parked. Like I don't think they moved the entire time I was there.
Because you don't know what you don't know, and not that a travel advisor will know every single thing about every single destination in the world, because the world's huge. But first and foremost, it's our job. So it's our time. We have the time to go and investigate what's the best way to do Telluride. Whereas maybe you have a few moments at the end of the day, kind of putting it together for everybody. That's our full-time job. So
I feel like that you think a travel agent, you think, okay, they're going to book the airfare, they're going to book the hotel, they're going to book the activities for me, and they'll all be kind of set up and ready to go. But do you guys find Airbnbs for people? I mean, how does that work when you have a large group that wants a house?
Right.
Because they don't pay travel fees to anybody.
Don't. Airbnb
or VRBO, right?
Nope. Thanks, guys.
So how does that work?
So there are some more travel agent friendly villa options.
Okay.
So there are some websites that we can use. But for the most part, if you did come to a travel agent and you were wanting to do more of an Airbnb, where we quite honestly get cut out of the deal.
Right.
It would be maybe a fee that we would charge.
Just a flat fee.
Yeah. Flat fee that maybe we would, we definitely charge flat fees. We might up that fee slightly, but probably nothing crazy. Because honestly, while that is a component, we're about building relationships with people. We're about giving elevated travel experiences, helping you get the best return on your investment. And if your best trip might include part of an Airbnb situation, we're not going to fuss at you. We're not going to be upset. We might though look at a situation and think, all right, that is the best situation for your family.
Yeah.
Because of the number of people, the way you want to interact with each other when you're on the trip. But there might be some destinations where, while it's cost effective, it's really going to impede how you're interacting with each other. Or you're thinking, well, we'll have this Airbnb. And you're like, well, but in that destination, there's not a whole lot of options should the Airbnb not work out. And Airbnbs can sometimes not work out.
Right.
And then you're kind of stuck. And then if you're in a situation where there's not a whole lot of plan B options, that can be a little nerve-wracking for some people,
Right.
So we might know too, while it's cost effective, it may not be the best option in a certain destination.
I mean, it gets tough when you're in my situation. You got son and you're carrying the girlfriend, and then you got to look at these, you got to look at these, I know, right? And you got to look at the layouts of the room. And you're like, okay, we can put her here. And then there's like a brother in this room here. No way he can sneak.
There are lots of connecting hotel rooms where then a door.
We don't want connecting hotel rooms.
And you can make sure that one hotel room's in between the two hotel rooms.
Right.
Exactly. There might be a situation
where
the Airbnb house option's not really ideal for what you're wanting.
Are you curious why annuities keep coming up as a potential investment option? People are often told that annuities can effectively mitigate investment risks and help secure their financial future. However, annuities often benefit the salesperson and might not be the best choice for you as a consumer. To learn more about the various types of annuities, the negatives of owning them, and better investment alternatives, we have a free ebook on our website just for you. To download our ebook, Buyer Beware, Why Do They Keep Trying to Sell You That Annuity? Simply click the link in the episode notes or visit wiserinvestor.com/guides. Now let's get back to the episode.
right. So let's kind of go back to the planning. So you're retiring in 10 years. You want to set a planning budget. How would you advise someone to build realistic planning budgets based on, let's say they know what they want to do?
Okay. Well, I mean, that would be my first thought. So again, if we're looking at not necessarily, all right, we've got spring break. We've got $10,000. What do we want to do? If you're looking at long-term travel planning, which is looking at your next 5 to 7 years, which is something that can be really beneficial for a couple categories of people. The first would be retirees. So kind of sitting down, maybe they've already sat down with you and they've decided here's how much of our monthly budget we can devote to travel. They could come to somebody like me and say, all right, we have in mind that over the next 5 years, we want to take a family multi-generational trip. We want to bring the kids, the grandkids, and we want to take them to Ireland. We have family heritage. We want to share it in Ireland. And we also then want to do a river cruise as a couple. And we want to go and experience a Alaskan cruise with the great, fantastic Alaskan train that they have there. So you're like, okay, let's look at how the best way to fit all of those within the next 5 years. And the benefit of that is not just the financial component, but it's also the scheduling component. So if you have grandkids who are graduating high school, or maybe they have some sort of active sports situation where, there are certain times of the year where they can't get away. We can look at the long-term picture of that to think, all right, if you want to go to Ireland, and the best time to go for everybody is July or August, when it can get pretty crowded in Europe and the UK and Ireland and those destinations. We can talk about how you probably should plan well in advance for that. And then you can think through, all right, do we want to stay in this small town versus this small town? And because one might be a little bit more crowded, and are we going to rent a car, and all those things. It just helps give you a lot more freedom to make it the best trip possible, because that way you can say, all right, well, if we need to give it at least a year out to really plan it well, then you could say, all right, well, let's put that into year 3. And since we know that one's going to be pretty pricey because we're going to be taking everybody along with us, and
right,
we're going to only ask a portion of it to be also paid by the kids, but this is mostly our treat. Let's put that into year 3, and we're going to build towards that one too, and know that might be our biggest ticket. And so what are you going to do in year 1 and 2? Maybe year 1's the year to take the river cruise, and be looking out for some maybe last minute fares on a river cruise, or deals or something that they might be putting out more last minute. But the benefit of the long-term planning really is finding that balance, striking that note of what is best, when, and what order, to mostly to maximize. And it might not always be to save a ton of money, but it's the best way to maximize what you're going to have, to make the best return on investment. And this goes to for maybe not just retirees. I was even thinking about other demographics that would really benefit from this long-term planning. And honestly, it's a lot of that like middle-age family groups. So if you're 48, walking into 2024, and you've got the next 5 years, you're looking at some milestone birthdays, possibly some milestone anniversaries, some graduations from your kids. So whereas maybe you spent most of your kids' growing up years doing summer vacations, 30A or St. Simon's or Kiowa, you're looking, though, you only have a few more years before they graduate. Because once they graduate high school, then you're no longer on spring break schedules together. Right. Like they're going on that, like you're going to be entering some pretty crazy years. So it's a great time for people who are in this demographic who are looking ahead to go, all right, we always said we wanted to go to Paris as a couple. Well, the 25th wedding anniversary is coming up in the next 5 years. How would that fit alongside our son is graduating from high school and we're going to start paying college
Right.
again. So, and I think that's where it helps too, especially in that demographic, to sit down with a travel advisor and a financial advisor to kind of say, all right, if there are these things we always dreamed about doing with our kids, and we feel like we do have the finances to do it, but it is going to start running up against things like college, car payments, that kind of thing. How best can we maximize what we can give? What can we give in the next 5 years? When should we scale back that year? Go back to the same condo at the beach that we have been, but what's the best year that then we could like really go for it as a family, do that family trip we've always wanted, and really make it the best that we can. Because while there is this idea of the last minute deal, I'm not saying there's not, especially with hotels,
Right.
it's possible. That maybe isn't the way you want to go if you're approaching like a milestone 50th birthday trip, or that like, this is before our kid graduates high school, family, this is our time to go and do something unique and special and bond as a family before things radically change. That's probably not the time you want to approach it as like, let's get that last minute deal.
Right.
You want to be able to elevate and maximize the most bang for your buck in that moment and really make it something memorable.
For retirees, it's just not traveling during the peak time.
And that's a huge benefit.
September is probably a great month to travel.
Mm-hmm. September's
Still warm.
Awesome. Shoulder seasons for a lot of destinations, actually, September, October is a great time to travel. The peak of summer's gone. Temperatures, especially in some of the European destinations, have gone down quite a bit. Can get pretty hot and crowded. Crowds are gone. So for retirees, a lot of it is the flexibility in their schedule.
How often are you seeing retirees travel that call you? If you're using a travel agent, you're probably pretty active, I would think, not just like a one-time thing.
Actually, quite a bit. I mean, I know we all kind of have our people that seem to come to us. I actually have quite a bit of clients who are like 55 plus, 65 plus. So that actually has been quite a number of my clientele. And I do see them traveling in those shoulder seasons, March, October, September.
But are they going somewhere like every other month, once a quarter, once a year? How often do you think they're? I
think they're traveling at least once a year.
Okay. So it's pretty normal just to go one trip a year.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I would say, especially now that's probably the one they're calling me about. I don't know if there's another, we went to the beach with the kids
true,
or something.
True.
But the one they're calling me about, the one where they're
ones.
wanting to go up to Sweden, or they're wanting to go down to Costa Rica, or they're wanting to go to Chile or something, the one that they're going to call me.
What's the most common destination?
Europe. Europe really is.
I feel like everyone's gone to Europe but me lately. Have you been to Europe in the last year?
I have.
Yeah, of course you have.
Oh, no. Well, I am a travel advisor.
That's true.
I do travel.
That's true. Everybody I talk to is like, oh yeah, we just got back from
Honestly, I was
somewhere
in
Europe.
Amsterdam in October last year, and it was wonderful. I know Amsterdam has quite the reputation for some wild.
Oh, that's right. You guys, you and your sister went to the Queen celebration. Was that a year ago?
That was 2 summers ago.
2 summers ago now. Okay. Mm-hmm. I remember that.
England.
Right before she passed away.
Yeah. That was amazing. That was wonderful. Love the Queen. But yes, so the shoulder season is a great time, especially for retirees. And we do see them traveling a good bit and taking advantage of that.
What about cruises? I keep hearing, people look at me like, I'd never be on a cruise right now because of all the diseases and everything else. Have you seen people just hop?
Oh my goodness, yes. Everybody.
I would think that's like, really?
Oh yeah.
Even like the big, huge cruises. I'm not talking about the river cruises. Mm-hmm. Okay, I would do a cruise if there's like 50 people.
Right.
But not.
So here's the thing.
Not like 3,000 people.
The big ones. So the people who are really going on those big boats.
Right.
And there's one with Royal Caribbean, I think that's setting sail. And I think it's like the biggest one.
Icon of the Seas.
Yes. There's like a whole water park on top of it or something.
That's crazy.
But there's a water park on top of it. And if you've got kids who are super active,
you just send them to the water park.
Yep. And then, but you get to go to several different places.
Yeah.
You can visit multiple countries, beaches, maybe have a little excursion into a market, come back. But for the most part, your activities, your food, your time, you're not packing and unpacking.
They have like internet where I can still work from the cruise. Is that a thing?
Most of them. Mm-hmm. It really is.
I just need 2 days off. After that, I get antsy and I get the shakes. I'm like, I've got to log into my email. I've got to see what everybody's doing at the office.
So sometimes we talk about trips for the kids and trips with the kids. So a trip for the kids might be Disney cruise. Yeah. Where it's like they are there. That's the gold standard. Right. Because of what they offer for kids. It's very engaging, great food, great activities, great destinations, good cruise time length. They have a number of 4 and 5 night cruise, which some of the other ones are the minimum. They might have a 6 or 7.
Oh, okay.
So if you're wanting a slightly shorter.
What's the key to getting a reasonable fare for that?
Timing.
So is it, you're looking like 2 years out?
Some of them, mostly a year to a year and a half is really when
we've been
drop.
invited on a few of those cruises, and it's always like, get a book by tomorrow. And I'm like, I'm not making that decision. And there was one that everyone at the kids' school was going to, like Alaska. But I priced it all. I was like, it's $25,000.
But it's
time you fly there. Yeah. It sounds cold.
Beautiful. You were just in Telluride.
I know. It didn't cost me $25,000.
It is. Well,
and I didn't have to get on a boat.
That's the thing of the, does the destination require it? Alaska the best way you're going to do Alaska is on the cruise.
Yeah.
And so kind of like, all right, if there's ever time, I'm going to go get on that boat. It would be for Alaska. However, there are lots of options.
Or something? Can't you do a train?
You can get off the boat and get on a train.
Yeah.
But then the best way to get back is on
the
boat. Just because you're out there and you see the cliffs and the glaciers and, and the beautiful majesty.
I'm just a weird traveler, I guess.
No, I don't think you're alone in that. I think there are quite a number of people who probably wouldn't necessarily have seen themselves on a cruise. But like I said, especially for the benefits of you unpack one time, you're there, you get to travel to multiple destinations for the most part. Although sometimes when you see an initial fee, that's mostly just for the cabin. It depends on the cruise line. But for many of them where you're like, wow, that seems like such a great deal, it's probably just for the cabin. Then you're probably going to be paying extra
for food and everything else
for better levels of food.
There's different tiers.
There are different tiers on most of them. Again, that's not across the board. There are some cruise lines that are starting to incorporate the better food packages into the fares themselves. And then there's a wide range. So there are the very massive ships, and then there are some that are a good bit smaller. For multi-generational families, river cruising actually is becoming a really popular option. There are several cruise lines.
Like the Viking cruises.
There are a couple other lines, such as one called Ama Waterways. They're a European-based cruise line, and they're doing a really good job of offering top-tier food. And it's included in their fares. River cruises are a little bit more all-inclusive from the get-go. But great excursion packages.
Yeah.
They've got a new ship with a pickleball court on it. So we are getting active on our river cruise.
Orthopedic surgeon.
Absolutely. Some great healthcare down the Danube for sure. But yeah, some great options if you are retirees and you are wanting to travel with the grandkids and you're wanting to bring them along with you. And you want to show them Europe, but you're a little afraid of your own stamina and pace. A river cruise is a really great option because there's a way that you can all kind of go out during the day and then come back, and there's a beautiful, peaceful, floating hotel, basically guiding you along the beautiful rivers of Europe.
Yeah.
Or there's a great AMA actually just opened up a line in Colombia. So they have a cruise going in Colombia. There's also obviously Egypt and the Nile and some of those bigger, more, I guess, adventurous destinations. If you wanted to incorporate that, Africa safaris, there's some really great, actually river cruises in Africa. So you could do like a cruise safari. So again, if you're somebody who wants to go to some of these, wonderful, beautiful destinations, but you're maybe a little bit nervous about the pace and you want to go see multiple places, but the idea of like
what about just safety
cruises.
Have you I mean, have you had anybody with concerns? I know our clients, not all of them. I've had a few that said, we love to travel overseas, but we're just worried about safety of Americans traveling overseas. But at the same time,
destination dependent, 100%.
Well, you're probably not doing a church tour to Israel right now, but
we have had, when that all started, there were a number of phone calls of people concerned, and obviously we would never push somebody to do something they're not comfortable with. But for the most part, there's stuff that can happen down the street here in safe Marietta.
Right.
If you think about safety, there's the world in general's not super safe all the time. So whether or not you're on the Danube or the Chattahoochee, there's stuff that can happen. But for the most part, it would be destination specific. I mean, if you're looking at something that would be a little bit riskier, there are things that you can do to up your safety as an American. But I'd say my personal travel experiences and what I've heard back from clients who've been literally all over the world, Costa Rica, Portugal, like I said, Sweden, England.
You can contract with services that Zambia, if you need to be extracted out of anywhere, you call this number and they don't ask any questions and they come in.
Travel insurance.
That's beyond travel insurance. I have talked to someone one time who showed me this card and he's like, he traveled foreign for work and he's like, we were given these cards, you call this number and they ping your location and they come and get you, like no questions asked.
Hey, if you're very, very concerned, there are services for you. Yes. I would say for the most part, though, the vast majority of people, when you're out there in the world, people are people and they're very gracious and welcoming you to their homes. And some of the more political, higher level, tensions and things that you might see or hear about on the news, you're not going to really feel that from the local who's serving the dinner. No.
And what your fear sells, right? We talk about this all the time. And what you see on TV is not reality. Right. It's like, I remember during the second Gulf War, I'd run into the soldiers at the airport and it's like, man, how is it really over there? Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, it's really safe. Mm-hmm. Any problems.
Right. So I think if
I'm like, wait, what? That's not, what about the bombings? Oh no, that's just one small area that is targeted, but the rest of it, it's fine. Mm-hmm. So absolutely.
And I think again, if you're somebody who is a little bit nervous, there are things that you can do. There are places that you can go. I would say if you're very nervous about walking into a situation where you're not going to be able to read or speak to a local in different language, then, there are some beautiful destinations where people speak English, I mean, there are things that you can do to
there are places you can go and things you can do with no anxiety.
Right. Yeah. Or, you're lowering your anxiety.
Yeah, that's true. Right.
But again, for the most part, travel is, it's safe. There's many, many, many safe, wonderful destinations where you're going to be
based on the number of people and the inflation that we see in the cost of travel, we'd say that other people feel the exact same way.
They do. And people are still getting out there. Again, I would say for families, there are lots of wonderful trips and ways that you can connect as a family, especially if you are in that phase where you've got kids, like I said, who are coming up to that high school or college graduation phase. And then maybe on the other side, you do have parents who are retired, but still fairly active. Travel's a great way to bond yourself as a family and give yourself some memories. I have some fantastic memories of my own with my grandmother. She took us out to Carmel, California one spring break, and I wouldn't trade that for the world. I mean, It gave me such a great sense of who she is or who she was, and I have some wonderful memories of that. So that travel, we talk the prices and the budgets, and there are just some things though that it's when you look back, it was worth the money, and travel's one of them for sure.
How do people reach out to you and find you on the web?
All right. So you can reach out to me, social media, Instagram, Facebook, Amy R _Blue Pineapple Travel. And you can find us at bluepineappletravel.com. Or you could email me, amyr bluepineappletravel.com.
That's in our show notes as well if you want to take a look there. Also, we have episode 192 in the past, estate planning for those that travel frequently or live in multiple states. We did that. I think we did that with Brian Smith over at Morringham Johnson Steele. Just talking about what you need to do if you're going to be traveling a lot, something were to happen, what kind of papers you need to be carrying with you. That was a good conversation. Episode 184. This was a fun one. What it's like to travel full time in retirement with the retirement travelers. I don't know. Did you listen to that episode? I don't know if you know. I think I told you about it. They were,
that's fascinating. I love that.
These people like sold everything down to their backpacks.
That's amazing.
And then they've been to like 176 countries. I asked them their top 5 favorite places to travel have been so far. They name places like I'd never heard of. Like, us normal people were like, oh, I like Paris. I like, Southern California. Right. And then they were like, just rattled off 5 places. Like, I have no idea where that is, guys, but that's awesome. We'll link to that on our website.
Good. Or like Sri Lanka. You're like, okay.
No, it was like specific cities inside Sri Lanka.
Okay. So even cooler.
But, she talked about, some places they like to scuba dive, and it was like, I think one of the top places to scuba dive, it showed up on a list, someone's list, but then you can't get to it. Mm-hmm. But these people have like their entire lives to get to it.
You can take the time.
Exactly.
Do the 5 airplane rides.
That was a fun episode. I think that was the one I did. I was actually with my daughter at a horse show in Kentucky, and we had to stay in a RV. So I was literally interviewing them from an RV in Kentucky. So it kind of fit.
That's amazing.
It fit perfectly. Imagine me in an RV.
I'd love to meet those people. They sound really fun.
They have their own YouTube channel too.
Should watch it.
All right, guys. Amy, thank you for coming on and doing this. Hopefully it's inspired our listeners to pack up and plan their next trip.
Absolutely. I hope so. Get out there. It's 2024.
All right. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you don't miss any new episodes. We'd also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out.
This episode was produced by Edward Resendez.
This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only and is not to be considered as investment advice or a solicitation to buy or sell any financial products, securities, digital assets, or any other investment vehicles, or a basis to make any financial decisions. Wiser Wealth Management Incorporated is a registered investment advisor with the SEC. The host and/or guest may personally own securities, digital assets, or other investment vehicles mentioned on this podcast. Neither the host nor guest of the show are compensated for their participation, and no referral fees are paid to or received by any host or guest for clients, listeners, or similar interests. Investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor, tax professional, insurance professional, and/or legal professional before implementing any strategy discussed herein. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.